Greetings, traveler. I am Sonox, the teller of tales. Would you like to hear one? Well, before we get started, perhaps consider subscribing to the channel, liking this video, and leaving a comment below. All three of those things help immensely with the YouTube algorithm, and we are still a small channel trying to grow to be much larger, so it is greatly appreciated. This one is called That Time My DM Tried to Turn My PC into an Edgelord Furry. How fun. Hello everyone, this is my first time posting here. Hopefully this will prove to be a cautionary and informative tale. This was a 5th edition game a few years back. I had been the group's DM but had recently lost my job and had been living out of my car for a while. So another player decided to take up the reins while I got my life back together. Out of respect for everyone's privacy, I'll just assign all involved monikers the other players can go by Charm, Clueless, Confrontation, and Edge. Edge was the player who decided to take over for me. He came up with this wonderful idea of a Sky Island adventure. We were all on board, and he even said he would give us all an extra boon. Our tiefling bard, played by Charm, received free wings. Our half-orc paladin, played by Confrontation, received the ability to summon flying mounts at level 1. Edge and Confrontation were besties. Clueless gained flight for his dragonborn paladin, and my half-elf cleric of Saloon could turn into a werebear. At first, I was like, okay, Saloon is a goddess of the moon, so it's not the craziest idea for a cleric of hers to be a werebear, but it didn't stop there. My half-elf cleric was male, but a Baishonin who had an upbeat and supportive personality. At least that's how I envisioned him. He grew up in an orphanage, and the caretaker was essentially my surrogate mother. Almost immediately, Edge began pushing the Blood Hunter class on me, telling me how my father had abandoned me after my mother was brutally killed by vampires, and how it filled me with a fanatical hatred of vampires and how bitter and vengeful my character was. Also, he wanted to make my character as hyper-masculine as possible, which once again went against the Baishonin persona I was going for with this character. Now, I had no issue with the dead mother and deadbeat dad, but I was not going to transform my character into a vengeance-filled edgelord. I wanted my cleric, to live life one day at a time and not become obsessed with a blood feud with vampires. Edge was a big fan of the underworld movies and lycanthropes in general, along with being a furry himself. As far as I'm concerned, there was nothing wrong with this in and of itself, but the problems began when he began pushing a few things that he personally enjoyed on my character, but more on that later. For the record, I have nothing against Blood Hunter as a class, it just didn't fit my character. Fast forward a few sessions, we're finally off the main island and traveling around, with the DM still trying to force the underworld storyline upon me after I told him that it didn't fit my character. I would fight vampires, but I wasn't going to be a vengeance-filled edgelord about it. This led to my first werebear transformation, which occurred during the middle of a battle. As I began to transform, Edge informed me that a furious, bloodthirsty rage overtook me as I was filled with hatred and fury over the dead mother who I had never met nor had any memory of. My epic one-liner in a deep voice, "Today's the day the teddy bears have their picnic." Now, to be fair, that song is low-key terrifying when you look at the implications of the lyrics, but at that point it was enough to completely take the wind out of Edge's sails. After the battle, I tried to turn back, but he informed me that my werebear form was now my default form, and that I couldn't turn back into a half-elf. My response to this, while somewhat juvenile, was to make the most groan-worthy bear puns whenever possible. It was unbearable! When I wasn't in hybrid form, he would have me randomly getting trapped in full bear form. During one session, when Charm wasn't around, and it was just me and Edge, Confrontation and Clueless, Edge decided that what my character needed was some romance. And this is where he tried to force a specific fetish of his on me and my character. What this actually entailed was him telling me that while I was in bear form, I was attracted to a female bear and wanted to reproduce with her. Naturally, I put my foot down and said no. He insisted, saying that my animal instincts had taken over, and it was only natural that my character would want to smash with a she-bear in heat. And I still put my foot down, saying I would not smash with the bear. This on top of my puns and refusal to be an extra from an Underworld franchise genuinely ticked him off, and I'm pretty sure Edge decided that my character had to go. Eventually, we got to our next island, after I was finally able to get back to my half-elf for an island that a group of evil fae were trying to get it to fall out of the sky. So naturally, not a single creature we fought actually had a few typing, or any typing that could be affected by my protection from good or evil, and they always seemed to target me. There was the Island Guardian, which was a Fey Celestial Undead combo that counted as none of those things. There were the Monstrosity Satyrs, the Fey Spiders, and of course, the Cataplebas, one of which tried to kill Charm's Tiefling after he had flown onto his back by mooring his neck at a 100-degree angle backwards that should have broken the Catapleba's neck. Charm had also rebelled against Edge and his attempts to make his backstory and character as edgy as possible. Eventually, things came to a head during our battle with a giant Stonehenge golem, a CR way outside of our level range, with the only way to defeat him being a puzzle we had received no clue or forewarning about, or even had a chance to activate it before this thing attacked. So even while Clueless and Confrontation, the paladins, were whacking at it, the Charm was doing his best to figure out what was ultimately a relatively simple elemental puzzle. My poor half-elf life cleric was drawing aggro on this death machine, going full defense with Shield of Faith up just to survive, as it continued to ignore the paladins that were actually trying to stop it. When I wasn't fighting for my life, I was launching guiding bolts, which naturally did nothing. Eventually, Clueless and Confrontation decided to help Charm finish off the puzzle, and I was saved, much to the annoyance of the DM. The campaign fell apart not too long after, as Edge didn't want to do it anymore, and despite my better judgment, I decided to run a Starfinder game as my life was beginning to pull itself back together. Eventually, Edge and Confrontation had a vicious and very ugly falling out, and the group was disbanded. Confrontation and I were never that close, and Edge just disappeared entirely. I also have no idea what happened to Clueless. Charm and I went on to form a new group. While small, it isn't nearly as dysfunctional. As a rule for my new players, I make sure I know what they are comfortable with and promise them that I won't force anything on their character that they don't want. Remember, friends, it's all about communication and respect. I agree entirely. It is insane. It seems that all of these DMs have some crazy fetish that they just have to live out. It's as if they get off thinking of other people or into the same things they are. I'm not quite sure why that's always the case. You did learn something, though. You learned how to be maybe more perceptive and understanding of other players. But it never made sense to me why a DM would try to control a player. It's one thing to try and maybe elaborate on their character or take the backstory you gave them and develop some sort of campaign progression around that. I understand that, obviously, that's part of the game. But trying to force you into being some sort of personality or something that you clearly don't want never made sense to me. And then trying to put certain preferences on you and force weird fetishes is altogether entirely inappropriate. But at least you've learned that, and we all can enjoy the story for what it is. Hopefully you don't go through that again and you have better experiences in the future. Well, that concludes our tale for today. If you enjoyed, please continue to come back and listen to more, as obviously that helps immensely. Please subscribe and like the video as well, if you don't mind, as those things also help. Thank you so much. I appreciate the support. The growth of the channel is absolutely phenomenal, and it's been quite a fun adventure, and I can't wait to give you more. Please do remember, if you'd like to hear more tales, come back and I shall tell you some. But if you'd like to hear another right now, perhaps watch another video. There's a few off to the side.